Hey everyone. In this episode, I got a chance to talk with Nyssa Cromwell, a VP of marketing over at G2V Optics, which is a solar simulation tech startup. As a computer programmer who pivoted into marketing as a second career, Nyssa is naturally tech focused and data driven. This made for a really great discussion on how she approaches capturing data, routing her leads to sales, aligning her marketing around pipeline and revenue. We also talk about her preferred KPIs and what she's measuring, what content she's consuming herself to stay current, and also why she's a self described LinkedIn lurker. So let's jump in. So, Nisa, it's great having you on the show. This is going to be fun.
I appreciate it, Eric. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, it's funny. We were just talking before the show about Tim Poggi, who is one of our folks on the CS side, and he had recommended that you and I sit down and talk, and it was surprising because I was like, I felt like I knew most of our agencies, and somehow we have not been able to connect up yet, and so this is going to be fun, and we're going to do it live. So this will be fun. So maybe what we do, like just to start, is maybe you could give a little bit of background for the audience on you and your agency and what you guys specialize in. And I can jump in with some questions because this is going to be fun.
Sure. So I kind of took a bit of a winding road into marketing. And so this is kind of my second career. So I started my career off as a computer programmer, actually. And so I worked on Y2K bug, believe it or not. And I built a contracting business with the Java development language. And so I did a lot of enterprise software development for insurance and government departments here in Edmonton.
Hmm.
And I think because people in my life knew me as a computer person, the computer geek, they kind of asked me about websites. And so I started building websites on the side. I back then I didn't even use a CMS. I would hard code it and build it with HTML and CSS and JavaScript, and so I built that for a few years, and then um, built my own website. I didn't know anything about sales, marketing, business, like a true, back end computer nerd, and I ended up building or attracting somehow a local retailer, a national retailer who has a few retail stores, and they had a website. And at the time, they only had a PDF catalog of all of their products. And so,
Awesome.
um, yeah, so it was a pretty awesome challenge to kind of translate that into an e-commerce system. And so I got to learn a new language. I used a Cold Fusion language and
Hmm.
built their e-commerce site and their back end software as well to manage sales and the warehouse and built that up. And in so doing, I learned a lot about some digital marketing. And so I got into digital marketing self-taught, learned about search engine optimization and email marketing and pay-per-click and social media. And so I just started working as an agency. They were my tenant client. I started working with a lot of local businesses and so small mom and pops, cleaning companies and home service businesses. Um, One of my best clients, because she kind of did everything I asked her to do, was an executive coach, and we built out her workshop business, and so she was able to do that. She was using Zoom at the time, so she was able to do it from Edmonton, working with clients all over the continent. And so we built up her site from 50 people coming to her site to over 14,000 global visitors, and she ended up selling that site. And so I really began to see the power of marketing and websites and what it can do for a business. And
Yeah.
um, I've pivoted now. I work with a startup in Edmonton called G2V Optics, and it's not a software startup, but a hardware startup. And we engineer sunlight, and so I work with a bunch of really smart engineers and scientists, and we build these pieces of equipment that are light sources for large companies, from institutions. Ivy League schools have come to our site and bought from us. And we've also recently sold to aerospace companies like NASA. And so that's been a huge feather in our cap. And we did a lot of that through the website and through content marketing. So I'm happy to kind of dig into anything you want to.
So that's an amazing journey.
Yeah.
I listen to people on these interviews all the time, and just starting out like you did in more of a IT background, and then that translating into some of the things that you're doing on the marketing side, because a lot of people think that it's like left brain, right brain,
Right.
and I would argue that that's really not the case. There's a lot of you know when you think about marketing, not only just the data involved
Yeah.
and manipulating the data, but also really just understanding critical thinking. How do you solve problems?
Mhm.
It's not about sitting back and you know ideating and sitting around a fluffy couch and drinking kombucha all day, right, with my little scarf. It right, it's very much a very scientific approach. There is the creative side of it for sure, but just through the lens of that data. um, so yeah, that's fascinating. I think that's cool, and I love what you just said in the just in the product that you're working with the company.
Yeah.
um, Engineering sunlight. That's
Yes.
like that's the thing that captures you, right? You're like, really? That's how do you do that, right?
That's
And you work through that. That's
mhm.
cool. So is that how you got involved with marketing automate? Like where did marketing automation come into play when you were thinking like along that journey?
Yeah.
Where was like the first point where you said, yeah, I need something to be able to automate this stuff, be able to understand more about these leads, flow, make them flow in the right direction, that sort of thing?
Like as you said, I do not come from a creative background at all. So I am, kind of, I would always say that I focus on the function and other people focus on the form and the creative. And so for me, my journey into marketing, when I first heard about it and thought about would I actually move into a career of marketing, I thought, I don't have any of the writing or the creative or graphic design. So what can I do? And so I found out about all the analytics, as you mentioned, the data and all of these tools, which I just love. And so part of the tool set that I got into early on is the marketing automation tool set. I remember working with Active Campaign years ago before it became popular, and I came across SharpSpring through another agency. And went through that card trick that you guys do, and I was like, "Wow, this is pretty cool." My client, the executive coach, she did personality assessments, and there was many different personality types, and so we put together a really cool email marketing campaign where it was similar copy, but with some conditional logic. We were able to generate multiple different emails all customized for the recipient. And so marketing automation, of course, plays a huge part in that. And now with the CRM and everything in one tool, it's to me critical to any revenue team.
That's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. So yeah. Well, one of the things that we talk about a lot, obviously, is the need for a what I'm going to call a revenue based marketer, revenue focused marketer,
That's right.
is really understanding like what are the things that are working right now in my campaigns that are actually driving more pipeline and revenue.
Mhm.
And it's funny, I literally did a post on this morning on LinkedIn where I was talking about how many marketing leaders and agencies have trouble articulating what's going on to somebody who's sort of a non-marketing executive, somebody who's in a C-suite, and sort of translating what's happening at in a marketing campaign into things that maybe a CEO really cares about, right? Which is the business outcome.
Mhm.
And it was fascinating, like just the comments and things I was getting back is like, wow, okay, like I sort of hit on a nerve here. Is that your experience? Just what do you see when you think about when you talk to your clients, specifically the one that you have now? Like, how do you communicate the value that you're bringing to the table? Like, what does that look like? What are the 3 or 4 KPIs that you typically use? Like, how do you articulate the objective, and then like here's how I contribute to that objective?
Yeah. So again, not coming from maybe a creative background, I never had anything but data driven metrics in my mind. When I worked with a lot of local small clients, they almost could care less what the website looked like and the fact that they had a website. They just cared about the
Yeah.
phone ringing. They needed the bottom line to be hit. And so that really taught me right away that, okay, I could have a great looking website. It could, have all these fancy bells and whistles, but if the phone's not ringing, then it's not good enough for what they need. And so now, when I joined G2V Optics, I'm their in-house marketer. I'm their VP of marketing at G2V Optics. I came to the table with a data driven mentality. I capture data from all the campaigns, all the tactics that I do, and I align it all the way up to the revenue. And actually, yesterday we actually have a monthly leadership team deep dive. And so I presented some results. And essentially it's, here's the revenue that we're able to hit as a revenue team. And here's a return on investment, revenue investment, and then gross margin return on investment as well, so they can really see that
Yeah.
bottom line. And so, I have a great, relationship with my CEO and the CFO. And so they
Yeah.
love seeing that data, and they love seeing the fact that I can align sort of the marketing that I do to
Yeah.
the bottom line.
Yeah. You know, I said that completely wrong. I was thinking you were doing it from an agency perspective, but yeah, you're the
In house.
VP over there,
Yeah.
and I completely like blanked there for a second. But
No
you know,
worries.
it's funny how it's actually the same discussion,
Yeah.
right?
Totally.
Whether you're a marketing leader or you're an agency, you actually do have the same sort of challenge, which is how do you communicate that to a non-marketing executive? How do you
Mhm.
communicate and translate what you're doing to into things like pipeline and revenue, like closed won deals, things like that. So yeah, that's cool. And it's interesting that those two topics, like regardless of your job title, it all or standing, they're the same sort of challenge you have to solve, because ultimately, right, that's sort of all that matters,
That's right.
and then, regardless of which side of the house you're on. So that's cool.
That's
Uh,
exactly.
so what, so talk to me really quickly if you can, because I love asking this question. Um, and I think a lot of the folks that are listening love to like hear the answer, and that is like, okay, you're a VP, you make most of the budget decisions, for around the marketing tech stack. You have an IT background, so you're probably, if I had to guess, more you're going to be more in depth with your questions than a typical VP would, because you're thinking, about the stack and how it fits together, and you
Yeah.
probably have a like an ops mentality a little bit,
I
right?
do.
And how this works. Yeah, okay. So you're nodding your head, so that's good.
Totally.
So how does that work for you? Like, what does your stack look like within your company today? And obviously, kind of, there's the SharpSpring component, but like, what are the other pieces? Like, what do you use to be able to drive the business?
Yeah. I have over 15 tools that I use. I'm a tool junkie, to be honest. But some of the tools, one of the tools that I implemented, month two, I joined G2V Optics in January 2019. So about February, um, I really wanted to surface the traffic that we get. So of course, we all use
Mm,
Google Analytics, but
yeah.
that's meaningless to the C-suite. And so I found a really impressive tool that surfaces the logos that come to our website, and that tool has been a hit. I mean, so as we're building our pitch decks, we're able to surface these incredible logos that are attracted to our website, and so that tool to me is a really big hit. And we
Is
use
that like
Slack.
a lead forensics or something like that, or what is it?
Lead feeder, exactly. So lead
Yeah.
feeder. So
Oh
so I
yeah, lead
really
feeder. Yeah, 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 yeah.
really love that tool, and that tool has been invaluable for our sales team. Our CEO is in there. I've asked them actually. I said, "Hey, wouldn't it be really cool if from your API, if I can grab the logo, then I can take that and share it into our Slack channels? That'd be really cool."
Yeah,
But they're still working on that. So
I
that's
love that.
one. Yeah, that's one tool. And I mentioned the Slack channel. So every morning when we wake up, because our audience is global, and so every morning, anytime they fill out a SharpString form, I throw that into a Slack channel to notify the group. And so we've got our C-suite in there, all the sales staff in there, and it just drives a lot of great discussions because I ask a critical question when they fill out a form. I say, "Hey, tell us about your research so that we can better give you a more customized quote." And in that answer, they give us a lot of information that then starts conversation with our product engineer leads and our sales folks so that they can better respond to that quote. And so being able to just take information from the forums or from the website analytics and sending it to channels like Slack has been really great for visibility and transparency and
Yeah.
conversation starter as well.
I love that. So you're using lead feeder, you're using, some tools that help you figure out like how to push all of that back into the product, so that you're able, and into the team. So
That's right.
what is your team actually made up of? So roughly how many marketers, roughly how many salespeople, like how does that stack up?
We are a startup. We're a lean, mean machine, Eric. So when I joined, we had a lean marketing team of two. So myself as the marketer and a creative person.
Yep.
It is now me, and I work with quite a few agencies to help.
Yep.
So with pay per click, and we've got a
Yeah.
creative agency that I work with. I'm
Yep.
recently just hired a content marketer, or he's not really a content marketer; he's a content technical writer. So I'm going to mold him into a content marketer. So that's going to be someone full time on my team. Our sales
Uh-huh.
group is larger, so there's three kind of sales account executives, if you want to call them that, and then we've got a large, 10 plus person engineering and manufacturing area, and then some further other team
Yeah.
leads. So we're about 30 people right now, and we're looking to raise a Series A and grow and scale a lot larger
Yeah.
the next few years.
So
Yeah.
the sales team was really embedded at that point when you
Oh,
came in the
everything.
door, and you were sort of grew the business off the back of that. Probably like a more like a traditional outbound motion, right? Setting
Totally.
meetings and AEs. Yep.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
then yeah, that's cool. And then they brought you in and they said, "Hey, we need more of these higher intent inbound type of leads. We need to be able to
Yeah.
drive more, hand them off, do some
Mhm.
lead scoring, put us in a position where we know which ones of these leads are surfacing, and handing those over to the sales team." Is that
I
is that
actually,
roughly right?
so I never really I love lead scoring just from a, conceptual point of view, but
Uh-huh.
I truly believe in sending leads to sales when they've actually raised their hand and said, "Hey, I want to talk to sales." And so we, of course, we have, we allow people to download PDFs should they want to. We don't gate anything, but we say, "Hey, if you don't want to read this 10,000 word article, download this
Yeah.
PDF." And so we get
Yeah.
emails that way. We have brochures that they can download via PDF.
Yep.
But we have two kind of core product pages where we have, our contact forms, and only those forms get sent to sales. So they've already just, demonstrated high intent. We don't use the lead scoring in that fashion because
Yeah.
we have quite a few leads coming in saying, "Hey, I want to talk to sales," and that keeps us busy. We're generating sales
100%.
from
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And
And
I
those are the best
know,
ones, like by
yeah,
sure. Like that's what makes you the hero with the sales team for sure,
totally.
right? So they're
Yeah,
like, give me more of those. And then
yeah.
it's just struggling to keep up, right?
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
all the other
I love that.
emails I'm able to retarget and, go
Mhm.
and we can do some outbound motion. But when they're ready to,
Yeah.
to talk to us and request a quote and talk to sales,
Yeah.
they do. So I
Yeah.
don't kind of force it. Yeah.
So what do you do on the mid like so that's fascinating. There are so many marketers that come on this show and they're still like they're behind you in the sense that they're they're still like very heavily leaning on the sort of this outbound motion and
Correct.
supporting
Mhm.
marketing supporting sales in that aspect as opposed to being a major contributor of the revenue that's coming in the door from the high intent inbound hand raisers.
Yeah.
So what does that look like for you mid funnel then? So you're capturing leads, they're maybe not yet quite ready for sales, but there's still some nurturing that has to happen. Like what kind of process or nurturing sequence do you typically think about when you think about your prospects?
We're actually extremely early in that journey, believe it or not. So we do a great job on top of funnels. So our SEO and our content marketing drives a lot of relevant traffic. And then, as I
Mhm.
mentioned, our bottom of funnel, the high intent leads, we do a great job and we close a lot of that. Middle
Yeah.
of funnel, I have a rather short and brief interaction with them. Once they request something, I respond back, and then I send an email saying, "Oh, by the way, should you want to request a quote, here's an easy to click link."
Yeah.
Um, we're currently implementing some retargeting to try and bring them back and bring them into the bottom of the funnel. But the email nurture sequence is a gap and is an opportunity for us moving forward, to kind of move them, send them case studies and that kind of thing. We just haven't
Yeah.
implemented that as yet. Another reason why we're using SharpSpring to be able to do that,
Yeah.
but we don't have the resources yet to kind of build some of these campaigns out. And so still a lot of
Yeah.
opportunity for us to grow.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think that's great. And it's what's interesting is, when I hear you talk, one of the things that I think about is like you're not alone, in the fact that that is a piece when you think about like CLM, like a CLM function, mid funnel, how you nurture those folks, how
Yeah.
maybe you're not using lead. Like it's funny, like actually we obviously we're users of our own product. One of the things that we do like with the lead scoring is I use that for my mid funnel stuff,
Mhm.
as much as I do anything else to help understand more about what their journey is,
Mhm.
right? And like what are they looking at? What do they like it, or what are they liking or downloading or interacting with from a content perspective, what have you. And that helps me, like I'm using lead scoring as a marketer, not to identify who to send off to sales, although we do that too. It's really more
Right.
like I'm using it to be able to say, of all, like, of my top 10% scored, what are they doing?
That's
Like,
right.
and then sort of create a profile out of them and say, okay, well, how do I get more of that sort of behavior or that more activity
Mhm.
to help them, help the bottom 90%, right?
Sounds good.
So I love that, like, just that function, just to be able to, as much for my purposes in marketing as for the sales team.
Well,
So
100%. Yeah.
yeah, so I was going to ask another question. Oh, I know what it is. So because you were very um technically savvy, which is more so than a lot of marketers,
Mhm.
what are you seeing? You said you're a tool junkie, I think is the name, like the wording you used for it,
Mhm.
or something to that effect. But it's like, what are the things that you're seeing that you like to be able to use to sort of stay current with, with what's out there? Like any kind of trends, anything that you're looking at lately. Like I was looking at your LinkedIn profile the other day, and it was like, you're you're huge into Airtable
Yeah.
and things like that. Like, what else are you using to be able to help do your job?
Yeah, so it's funny because I actually answered a comment that was on LinkedIn the other day, and one of the things I've always been puzzled by, and so I love the CRM tool, but I really want a tool that has like a 360-degree view of the contact record. So I'm someone who captures a lot of information, links about a record, and I have no place to put it. So I currently just have built something within Airtable, but I'd love to see that kind of tool within a CRM. And so a
Yeah.
couple, like I think there was one, I don't even know what it's called, data tools or something that might be able to do that. So I'm going to look into that.
Hmm.
Um, but metadata is a tool, you probably heard of metadata.io, that I'm kind of looking into right now.
Yep.
As we're building out our own ABM or, more sophisticated outbound outreach campaigns,
Yeah.
trying to, and as a lean team, I'm trying to figure out, okay, what tools can I use to kind of leverage, my knowledge without
Yeah.
having to hire more people and more agencies. And so a tool
Yeah.
like metadata is something I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Um, and
So
then
we
Airtable.
can totally talk about that offline, by the way. We use
Yeah.
metadata for our own purposes.
Oh,
So
I'd love
yeah, I'd
to.
be happy
Absolutely.
to tell you whatever
Yeah.
you want to know.
Hmm.
So in terms of the CRM that your sales team uses, are they using Salesforce or something like that, or are they using our, like, the
We're,
CRM, the SharpSpring CRM?
we're using the SharpSpring CRM.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Mhm.
Okay, so they're using the SharpSpring CRM, they're using the calling and everything else too, and or are they just using the CRM component?
Not the calling at all. So we use just a
Okay,
CRM component. Yeah.
got it.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
got it. So they're using the CRM component,
Mhm.
and then you're looking. So trying to think of how to answer or ask this question. So they're using the CRM. You're on the you're primarily in the marketing automation side. What you said before, you said something to the effect of, I want to be able to have more of a 360-degree view
Mhm.
of the customer.
Mhm.
Help me understand really quickly, like, so we have obviously we have a feature called the life of the lead, right? And so we think about, like, what are the different touch points that you need from, what's happening, from, once they hit your site all the way through to a closed, through the pipeline to a closed one deal.
Mhm.
What is what in that life of the lead do you use it? Well, first of all, I guess, do you use it? And then
Mhm.
secondly, like, what do you find valuable?
I actually really love the life of the lead instead of my sales team because again, it goes back to kind of you were talking about the middle of the funnel. So I'm able to see if they're visiting the pricing article or if they're
Yeah.
visiting, the product pages, and so are they. And so they can better tailor their customized emails and their communication with the client that way. Um, So with SharpSpring, the 360-degree view, so certainly the custom fields are great. We're able to capture information. But for me,
Yep.
it's more the links that I want to capture and then the relationships between links. And so, as an example, we work with a lot of universities and they all work from a university lab. And so, more than one person is part of a lab. I'd love to be able to say, here's the lab, and here are all the people that belong to that lab. And some people move from lab to lab. So I'd be able to like trace that entire lineage. I'd love to be able to do that within a tool, within a CRM. And as I mentioned, like I capture the Twitter accounts and all of the social media profiles, websites.
Yeah.
It'd be great to be able to capture history of a client and where they are today. Um,
Yeah. So I that's actually fascinating, by the way. I'm just writing that down real quick while we're
yeah, no worries.
talking.
I'm happy to talk to you about
So
that because I would love to
yeah,
see a really robust CRM that can
yeah,
do that.
yeah,
Um, again, I've built kind of some kludgy solution in Airtable, although I love Airtable,
yeah,
but I really want it to be in the place that sales is living in as well as customer
yeah,
success, right? So we all have different perspectives of the customer,
yeah,
and I'd love for all of us to be able to see the one record and all the information that we need from our perspective in one
yeah,
place, and all the history and all the
yeah,
linkages and the kind of the network effect of
yeah.
uh, information.
Yeah. So, at the account level, and then within the account level, the individual leads underneath the account level.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's interesting. So that maybe we'll take that one offline too, because I have a couple of
Totally.
thoughts on that one.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's cool. And you have. So I love your perspective, by the way, as a guest, because you are that more of that technical background.
Yeah.
What do you? So let's talk about that really quickly. So you had an interesting path to a VP position.
Mhm.
What's your advice for somebody who's really just starting out,
Mm,
and they're
mhm.
looking for a career in, in SaaS or in tech or marketing, like for a SaaS company? Like, what would you tell them, if they came to you and said, "Hey, what do I need to know? What are the skill sets that I need to have?"
The best advice I have, and something that I took to myself, is to just build something. So,
Mm,
I built a website back in the day from scratch,
yeah,
and then I had to figure out how do I get it to rank. And then, I want to understand how many people are coming to the site. What tools do I need to install to understand who's coming to the site?
yeah,
And so, in this day and age, with no code tools and CMSs, it's rather trivial. The technical side is rather trivial to do, but
yeah,
understanding the nuances between the different types of marketing tactics and campaigns.
yeah,
Obviously they can go to school, but I don't even think you need to go to school. Like YouTube and the websites, the
yeah,
vendor websites give us so much free,
yeah,
incredible information. It's just a matter of putting it into practice and actually doing it.
yeah,
I'm hiring, and I would prefer people who have experience and who can show
yeah.
me a portfolio of something that they've done versus a certificate from a school.
I am in that camp too, right? So,
Mhm.
and frankly, I don't know of a real series of courses that you could take that gives you what you need. You can go to school, you can take some classes, but they're never practical
Practical.
application to what it is that you need to understand, because they can't they it's got to be evergreen, right? They got to
That's
keep it. And it does there's just such a disconnect with the space that we're in, because it changes so quickly.
yes.
And having that relevance is, and the ability to come in and have a direct impact, hitting the ground running, is a huge benefit.
Oh, absolutely.
And I loved your advice, by the way, because it's similar to what I give people, which is, look, you're never going to just be able to learn and absorb as much as if you just do it yourself, right? You're just using all of your faculties to be able to pull that off. And I think a lot of the thing that we miss as marketers is, like, if we come up through a specific silo, right?
Mhm.
I am in marketing ops, or I am in, demand generation, or I am in whatever. Uh, you like don't have the all of your synapses firing and making those connections to be able to understand holistically sort of what's working, what's not working, and why, and the underneath why.
Mhm.
And that's why I love working with entrepreneurs and agency owners and folks like that, because they've done that, right? They've felt that pain, they totally get it. And they've started drawing all of those connections. So
And you have to do it all. So being a lean machine running my own agency in the past, I've had to do it all. And so
yeah,
certainly I believe in specialization as you kind of grow and mature in your career. But in the beginning, I think being full stack I think is super important to really get exposure to it all and understand, as you said, the holistic uh,
Yeah.
connections that tie all the different marketing campaigns together.
Yeah. So there was this study that Ascend2 Research did.
Mhm.
Can't remember exactly when they did it. It was a last quarter, the quarter before,
Okay.
where they'd asked a question of marketers,
Mhm.
and 350 or so marketers, where they said, "Hey, look, uh, what what is it that about a marketing stack is the key to success, right? Because I think we can both agree, or maybe feel free to disagree, I guess. But like I feel like one of the things that we can do is we can, as marketers, we kind of like to follow the flashy things and throw things against a wall to make them, to see if they stick or not. But we spend a lot of cycles experimenting with stuff, I guess, is really my bottom line. But yet at the same time, we asked this question to marketers, and we said, what do you need? And what they came back with was the most successful marketers are 118% more likely to have that fully integrated marketing tech stack.
Mhm.
And and it was surprising to me that the number was, I mean, I figured it was high, but I didn't think it was that high,
Mhm.
right? And then we paired that or juxtaposed it against another question for sales teams, or well, marketing and sales teams, and we said, like, the most successful sales teams are 108% more likely to use sort of these automation tools, um, than perhaps, what I'm going to call like less successful counterparts. And
Mhm.
so, like, to me, that's interesting, right? It's like, if you can take the basic, it's almost like it's the justification for machine learning, in a lot of ways, right? It's like, take all of the basic blocking and tackling, repetitive stuff off of your plate,
Yeah.
so that you can free up bandwidth and capacity and brain space to be able to focus on being more creative and more strategic.
And have better
And
conversations, right, with your customers and your prospects, right? Really dig into their problems so that you can
yeah,
actually help solve with your problems and your products and
yeah,
services for sure. Yeah.
yeah. So then, like, I know I'm throwing a bunch of numbers out at you, but then, like, the flip side of that is, 59% of those same marketers feel that they don't
Mhm.
have the data that they need to feel confident about the marketing campaigns that they're running, like, and identifying which ones are working and which ones aren't.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So, this sort
We're
of comes
still
back
there in
to,
this day and age. It's crazy. Right.
yeah, yeah. And so I struggle with that when, because today we have more and more data than has ever been available to us, and
Exactly.
yet we are having trouble sort of like separating the wheat from the chaff, right? It's like,
Mhm.
what are the most important things that we need to dial in on, and
Mhm.
then everything else is sort of like, we set that to the side. And one of the things that we miss is, like, this concept of, like, really understanding, which campaigns are driving that pipeline of revenue, like we were talking about at the beginning of the episode. So, like, what kind of advice would you have for them? Let's say you parachuted into a, well, let's just use the company that you're in now. So you came into this company, you were
Yeah.
marketer number one or two,
Number one.
right? And you said, okay, I've got to build this thing basically from the ground up.
Right.
What was the first 100 days like for you? Like, what were you doing? What were you identifying? Like, what were the KPIs you were zeroing in on? Things like that.
Yeah. Awesome question. So I got the keys to the website day two, and so I basically took over. And so for me, it started with a technical audit of the site, and I won't go into too much detail, I guess, but understanding what Google thinks we have at the site. And at the time, there was a lot of superfluous, negative technical SEO issues happening, and so I realized I'm going to have to rip and replace the website.
Yeah.
So for me, the number one thing was, how do I ensure that traffic is still coming? And so that
Yeah.
for me is where paid ads make sense. Let's capture the demand that's out there. And so what I did first was just shore up the paid ads, make sure that the paid campaigns were working. I improved them, added some key keywords that actually drove a lot of traffic and a lot of conversions. And then that freed me up to not think about losing any organic traffic that I knew I was going to lose by ripping and replacing the website.
Yeah.
So building, to me, the website is the foundation. It has to be sound technically. And so I rebuilt that. And then I knew, because my previous experiences in agency work, I knew that content was key. And so we're in a scientific technical area, and I think people make the assumption that scientists already know everything, but I'm like, let's build a really incredible resource around this thing that we do in this industry called solar simulation. And so we built a large comprehensive 10,000 word article about that, and so I built that out. And I truly believe in just some of the small minutia of UTM taggings. Like, I want to know where people are coming from. So all of my campaigns external to the website have UTM codes so I can see that this channel or this campaign is working. And so adding that for sure was part of the 100 days. And then, just building out the email kind of newsletter kind of capture program, and being able to distribute information every quarter. And so that's sort of what I did for the first 90 days. And that ended up being a great foundation where we're still leveraging some of those assets today.
I love that because it does give you all of the pieces you need to hold in your hand to be able to also come back and articulate what you're needing for a strategy, right?
Yes.
It's like it's data gathering, but also like getting in and actually having an impact, short-term wins while you're building out a strategy because you need to know the same things anyway. So you're sort of doing them at the same time.
Mhm.
And then probably having a consistent series of touch points with, the CEO, et cetera, to be able to not only communicate, but also, start getting buy-in,
Oh,
for the strategy. That's
absolutely. My
cool.
budget has grown exponentially since then because they're just seeing the return. I mean, we're fortunate where marketing and inbound drives more than 80% of our revenue and 80% of our pipeline. So
Yeah.
it's an investment that they keep on growing, which
Yeah.
is exciting for me. Yeah.
So that's a question that I had, so like the company started out primarily on the outbound side, right? They had a very heavy sales motion, BDR to AE or SDR to AE type exchange, sales led. And
Mhm.
and then you come in, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, "Hey,
There's another way.
yeah, there's a better way. Let me talk you through those steps."
Yeah.
And now so you basically went from, like, I don't know, I'm making this up, but 10 or 20% or whatever inbound or whatever, very like very inefficient, right? Those would
Right.
be like emails inbound or whatever, somebody heard about you or referral or whatever, right?
Right.
But you grew that from basically very little to 80%. What did
Mhm.
that look like? How long did that take? Like what did those like types of leads look like, like as
Mhm.
they started growing?
Mhm.
Like what is that like help us understand that?
It's been a really great progression. We are now wanting to kind of bring in those seven-figure deals consistently. And so now that's when we're looking at kind of the account base or the enterprise outbound motion. But there's
Yeah.
going to be a strong, of course, digital presence to that, building out
Yeah.
the landing pages, the customized
Yeah.
ads and emails. And, obviously there's going to be some event marketing as well where we get to go and meet with people face to face and flesh to flesh. So yeah, trade show season starting up again. And that's also part of the mix. And so I believe in kind of holistic marketing, but I
Mhm.
believe in kind of this anchor of the digital, the web presence, the inbound motion, which we've built a really nice foundation.
So that's fascinating, right? So that you have these fairly decent sized logos that are coming in, and then
Yeah.
I don't know if you can talk about this or not, but what is like the rough like ACV of a product
Yeah.
like yours?
It's five figures. So I
Five
mean,
figures. Hmm.
when I first started, we had one product. Now we've got kind of a larger product, and
Yeah.
so our larger product, it's exciting because you can buy it for the 25K at low end, and when you soup it
Yeah.
up, you kind of get to 50K. But it's actually a tileable product, and so if you need kind of one light source, you buy the one. But if you need to illuminate, like a plane or a bus or a
Yeah.
satellite, which some of these large companies do, you end up buying hundreds of them, and so our lifetime value of a customer can get quite large. It is a one-time sale, but it can get quite large. And so we
Yeah.
start at the 10,000 plus kind of thing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's where, like, when you think about like those larger logo
mhm,
accounts
mhm.
where ABM really does start to make
Totally.
sense, right?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so yeah, now I can understand like why you're thinking about some of the other tools that you're talking about bringing in. Okay,
Absolutely.
cool,
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah.
So I think we could probably talk about this all day, but
Right.
here's another question. So
Yeah.
where do you get your content from? So, like, how do
Mhm.
you learn? How do you grow? How do you keep on top of things? Like, where do you hang out? That sort of thing.
Content for G2V Optics or for marketing?
For you, and specifically for to up level your skill set, things like that.
Yeah. I am a huge online lurker. So LinkedIn, I'm following some of the LinkedIn leaders and cutting edge folks here.
Yep.
I consume a ton of content. I'm watching YouTube videos usually on double speed all the time.
Yeah.
My newsletter, my inbox is usually filled with a bunch of newsletters,
Yeah.
um, and so I go to a ton of webinars. So again, like metadata or SharpSpring, I go to a ton of webinars, probably once a week at least. I've got a couple webinars on my
Yeah.
calendar. And so for me, it is important to always know kind of what's coming
Yeah.
up. Am I missing anything?
Yeah.
Have I got everything covered? And so I'm always,
Yeah.
books, albeit I don't read as many paperback books anymore, but,
Yeah.
next CMO, obviously awesome. There's some really amazing, incredible books out there that I also dig into.
That's
Yeah.
cool. So,
Mhm.
it's funny you mentioned metadata too, because they were on the show. Jason Widup, Mark
Oh,
Huber. They've been on a couple of different episodes of this
nice.
show,
Mhm.
and we talk a lot about like some of the things that they're seeing that's working around ABM and marketing for their own, for their own company, which is interesting. There's a couple of different episodes that we have in this podcast for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's fast. Yeah. So it's funny you say that, right? Like there are 99% of all, I mean, I'm making that number up, but it's high, of
Yeah.
all of the people that are on LinkedIn are exactly what you just said. Like they're digital lurkers, right? They're not commenting, they're not liking, but they're
Yeah.
definitely engaged,
Mhm.
and looking. And I think, a lot of times people like lose sight of the fact that you're having a real impression on people, getting
Oh,
your
yeah.
message and your
Agree.
strategic narrative across without
That's right.
necessarily having them, directly engage all the time. So this
That's
is,
exactly right. Yeah.
yeah, your case study, like you're talking about, is exactly, the
Mhm.
same. So that's cool.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
So this has been fun. I really enjoyed it. I guess like there are two follow-up questions really quickly, and then we'll
Yeah.
wrap up.
Sure.
First is, do you have any questions for me? So always, like to try to open it up in any way I can to be able to ask some questions. You got a couple of them that we're going to take offline. We're going to talk about, but are
Absolutely.
there any other questions or things that, just sort of
Yeah.
marketer talking to marketer, and do you have for me?
I'd love to understand kind of the vision that Constant Contact has for SharpSpring because that was a huge, like it was a huge shock when SharpSpring got purchased. And I'm like, Constant
Yeah,
Contact, interesting. Okay. Like
yeah,
QuickBooks buying MailChimp. Obviously, all of these large companies are wanting to add this marketing
yeah.
automation CRM tool set to
Mhm.
their set of tools. So I'm just curious what's coming down the pipe that you can tell us because I'd love to know.
Yeah. So, it's funny. I got this question the other day from somebody
Mm,
else, and the answer that I gave them is, we have been really lucky. Not all acquisitions go well, right? But
mm,
we've been really lucky in the fact that we've got really, constant contact is great. In the fact that you've got Frank, who's the CEO, and you got the leadership team over there who really want to grow. And one of the things that they recognized very early on was, hey, we need to address more of those more sophisticated, kind of customers that are doing, full funnel marketing.
right. Yes.
And so obviously SharpSpring really dovetails nicely into that. And so the amount of investment that we have seen is gone up, and the attention that we've seen has gone up. And I'm being included, which has been a lot of fun, by the way, into the product and engineering, software engineering, discussions around the roadmap and other things that, as we're thinking about things like, they're actively asking questions, like great questions, like what is sales and marketing seeing in the market right now?
Right.
And how does our, how to, like, if we're talking about a particular feature or something, like how does it stack up? Where are the gaps? What do we want to focus in on?
Awesome.
And I have been using this. It's funny, like I've never said this out loud, but I've actually been using this podcast and these discussions, just like this one, to
Yeah.
inform those discussions, like
Okay.
within like product and everything else.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense. Yeah.
somehow,
Yeah.
some way,
Yeah.
right? It's gonna like we're gonna connect dots somehow, and this conversation is gonna make its way into something on the roadmap one of these days. But yeah, I mean, they're like the team. It's just fun to watch. They're super engaged. They're very, like it's a challenge for sure. I mean, I'm not like I don't want to like sugarcoat it, but because every time you do an integration like this, every
Oh,
time you do, certainly an acquisition, um, you want to try to put the right pieces in place. But I think the desire is there to sort of take what we're doing and make it better, right?
mhm.
And I don't know when it's going to be, but we had a conversation, I don't know, about 10 days ago, something like that, where we were sitting down and we were saying like, we want to do a new, like the next partner and customer update. We want to have, some of these other people on to talk about some of the vision and talk about some of the things that that we're thinking about, not only as a company, but also within the product. So that'll be fun. And, I think more to come on that, but it's, that'll help answer some of those questions too.
Another question I have for you is actually, I don't know if you're kind of pointing towards the CMO, but what can we do as marketers to kind of get to that next level? How do we level up to kind of get to the CMO and the C suite and really have a seat at the table as a strategist and as a key member of the
Yeah.
business?
Yeah. I'm going to rewind and sort of echo what we talked about at the beginning of the episode. I think if there isn't I'm making a general statement here, so forgive me, but I can't think of a successful CMO who isn't able to sit down at the table with a non-marketing executive like the CEO, CFO, et cetera. And and if they can't be a part of the strategic thinking behind the business, if they can't talk the language of the CEO, CFO, i.e., things like the business outcomes, like driving, the things that actually, talking about deals and closed won, percentages and like what's going on in the pipeline, like things that are like real challenges that the sales team is having,
Yeah.
LTV, CAC, like all of those things, like that
Mhm.
really are those key like top line numbers, above the campaign metrics and everything else. Like those are the key drivers.
Mhm.
If you can't clearly articulate those things, if you don't know what is driving them, if you know if you're coming to the table and you're talking about things like campaign metrics,
Yeah.
you're not going to be taken seriously, right? And you're and so you want to be able to talk and sort of think like the CFO, right? Um, and you might have a marketing title, but you want
Mhm.
to be thinking about the business. You want to be
Yeah.
thinking holistically about the key drivers. And
Mhm.
when you are able to do that, and you can sort of articulate things clearly, of course, coming to the table with a lot of data, that you have put together that helps you make informed, discussions and conversations. um, that's when you start getting asked back a lot more, right? And
Right.
that's when like opportunities come up both internally and then also obviously externally. um, I think the other thing I would say is be more active in the communities in which other executives or marketers are looking for talent, right? So if you are looking for that next thing or the next milestone, right? Be more active in places like LinkedIn, be more active where you're posting content that really is important to you, but then
Mhm.
also, sets you up well, in in the eyes of, the people that you want to be in front of. And it's funny, like some of the best hires I have made
Yeah.
are actually it's never been because, well, let me rephrase. Like recently, let me say recently,
Sure.
some of the hires that I have made
Mhm.
were not really based on a resume. It was based on the content I saw them putting together in
Yeah.
places like LinkedIn, and then I would reach out to them. We'd have some kind of conversation,
Mhm.
and that's the way it started. But I almost like it sped up the hiring process because I already knew how they thought because I could
Right.
see it,
That's right.
right? And it was like legit. It wasn't fake,
Mhm.
and sort of puffed up from an interview perspective or what have
That's
you,
right.
right? It was real,
That's right.
and it kind of got us to the hiring point faster,
Yeah.
because it was pretty clear, like they saw things the same way I did, or vice versa.
Right.
So,
That's right. Come out
so
of
I
the
think probably
shadows.
those two things, yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool. So, this is fascinating. And Nisa, so how do people get a hold of you? Like if they wanted to have a conversation with you, talk to you,
Mhm.
they wanted to reach out to you, like how would they get a hold of you?
Yeah. I'm on LinkedIn, Nyssa Cromwell. So I'm sure you'll put a link there, but NYSSA Cromwell. And then G2VOptics.com. There's the about page. And if they click on my picture there, they'll get to my LinkedIn as well. But that's probably the best place to get a hold of me.
That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for spending some time with us. I really appreciate it. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Eric.